we have to read it. So one of you has to read, and usually the first reading,
I'll
Archana.
do it, Rangada.
That's
Because
right.
today we have few, and
That's
then I think everybody will get a chance today.
yes. Okay. Right. So
If
Archana, start.
yes, Rangada. If there were not this rising of man into the Godhead to be helped by the descent of God into humanity, avatarhood for the sake of the Dharma would be an obtuse phenomena, since mere right, mere justice, or standards of virtue can always be upheld by the divine omnipotence through its ordinary means, by great men or great movements, by the life and work of sages and kings and religious teachers, without any actual incarnation. The avatar comes as the manifestation of the divine nature in the human nature, the apocalypse of its Christhood, Krishnahood, Buddhahood, in order that the human nature may, by molding its principle, thought, feeling, action, being on the lines of that Christhood, Krishnahood, Buddhahood, transfigure itself into the divine. The law, the dharma, which the avatar establishes, is given for that purpose chiefly. The Christ, Krishna, Buddha stands in its center as the gate. He makes through himself the way men shall follow. This is why each incarnation holds before men his own example and declares of himself that he is the way and the gate. He declares too the oneness of his humanity with the divine being, declares that the Son of Man and the Father above, from whom he has descended, are one, that Krishna in the human body, Manushim Tanum Ashritam, and the Supreme Lord and Friend of all creatures are but two revelations of the same divine Purushottam, revealed there in his own being, revealed here in the type of humanity.
There is an important paragraph, because usually people feel that the function of the avatar is, as it is said in the Gita, dharma sansthapanarthaya. So that is that they feel that. But Sridhar is going one step more, and he's saying that the avatar comes down because he's showing the path. And not only he's showing the path to others how to do with his own life examples, but also hewing the way through the forest and creating the possibility. Okay? So that's exactly what he's saying here. And this is something that nobody else says so clearly. He says that the avatarhood will be meaningless if this example of the avatar life, how to go about going to the divine, was not there, then it would be quite useless. Or to use is something unnecessary, futile, superfluous, unnecessary. So this is what he's saying. It's a very important point. Okay, so I'll read each sentence and we'll see. And he's explaining how the dharma samsapanartha can be done by other means. Okay, that's what he's saying. It will be very slow, but it can be done in any case. So, if there were not this rising of man into Godhead to be helped by the descent of God into humanity, avatarhood for the sake of the dharma would be an obvious phenomenon, unnecessary. Since, he is explaining why, since mere right, mere justice, or standards of virtue can always be upheld by the divine omnipotence through his ordinary means, by great men or great movements, by the life and work of sages and kings and religious teachers, without any actual incarnation. Note the word uh, upheld right, mere justice, or standards of virtue. These words are very, very clear. He could have said justice, but you see, mere justice at a human level, only justice at our level, and standards of virtue. Okay? Virtue is morality. That can be done by others. Morality is not spirituality at all. And all that can be, if you interpret dharma as exactly this, right, mere justice and standards of virtue. If you interpret dharma in that sense. But actually, dharma is not only morality; it's much more than that. So he's saying that that could run the ordinary way. Note the standards of virtue. Virtue is certainly not a spiritual quality. I'm not saying that it is bad, but I'm saying that it is not spiritual, because spirituality can go beyond sin and virtue. Okay? In the Ramayana, we have got constantly many examples where Rama is doing something which is not virtuous. Okay? He is, for instance, he is killing Bali by standing behind somebody and hiding himself. So that is considered also immoral. In a fight, you must show yourself and openly fight. That is one example. There are several other examples also. Okay? Krishna also is well known for things which were not considered moral. So human beings, for them, virtue is very great, and rightly so. Virtue has, of course, virtue has to be pursued for normal men without the spiritual life. If spiritual life is not there, virtue is very important. But if you enter into spiritual life, virtue is a very secondary quality. You can actually be not virtuous at all if you are spiritual. Perfectly allowed, because it's a higher standard. It's not a mental standard. So this is exactly what he's saying. It's very, very clear what he's saying. Mere justice and standards of virtue. He's not talking of the last one. Now you can see how important the chapter standards of virtue is. Standards of conduct. Only the last one, where you give up all dharmas, that is the spiritual rule that has to be followed and depend only on the divine. So, since mere right, mere justice, or standards of virtue can always be upheld by the divine omnipotence through its ordinary means, by great men or great movements. Okay, many movements were there now in our Indian system. Also, many movements were there in Christianity also. Many movements, the Protestant movement. So all these are breakaways from the limitations of the ordinary life, by the life and work of sages and kings and religious teachers. Interesting example is that of King Ashoka, who after the Kalinga war, he saw the tremendous damage that he had done, killed so many people. He became a Buddhist and he spread Buddhism. So that this sort of work can be done by others, by kings, sages and kings. So I'm just mentioning also kings. I don't remember if there's any other king also. Of course, Krishna was a king, but they're spiritual. Janaka was a king, okay. Dasharatha was a king, but it's not, we're not very specifically mentioning anybody. Work of sages and kings and religious teachers. Without it, note the word religious teacher, not spiritual teachers. So, everywhere the sentence is very clear, he is talking of the lower standards. The lower standards, if interpreted dharma, then it can be done by other means. Avatar need not come down. It would be like using an atom bomb to kill a mosquito. Not necessary at all. It can be done by other simpler means. That's what he's saying. I read the next sentence. The avatar comes as a manifestation of the divine nature in the human nature. So, the divine nature in the human nature. The apocalypse. The apocalypse is the revelation to Saint John of Christ. Christ appears to Saint John after his passing away. That's the apocalypse. The appearance of the divine to human beings. That's the apocalypse. In human nature, the apocalypse of Christhood, Krishnahood, Buddhahood, in order that the human nature may, by molding its principle, thought, feeling, action, being on the lines of that Christhood, that Krishnahood, that Buddhahood, transfigure itself into the divine. So you have to follow examples. Also, if you remember in the synthesis, he says that the Guru teaches by three methods. Okay? One, by teaching the scriptures. Two, by example. Okay, his own example. And 3, by the influence. The very fact of his presence in the physical world becomes a powerhouse of spreading the vibrations of love, knowledge, all these things. So those who are in the proximity of a guru will benefit even if they are not open, because this is all the power that flows from an avatar is unbelievable, and those who are ready to receive it can receive influence. In the synthesis, clearly, these are the 3 examples. Teaching, that is available to everybody. Then example. But the example Srivata says very clearly in the synthesis, that is not physical example. It is the way you live that has to be followed. Physical example should never be done. Okay. For instance, Ravan Maharshi is wearing only a loincloth. So you also should start wearing a loincloth. Not necessarily at all. Okay. Srivata is wearing only a dhoti. Okay. Should you do that? No. It's not that. It's the inner life that has to be changed. Then take mother's case. Okay. She did not like milk at all. Okay. So you also will give up milk. That is like it should not be physical. That's what he explains in the synthesis. So, in fact, what did mother do? She herself could not digest milk, but she arranged for 3/4 of a liter per person every day in a dining hall. So this shows that the influence is the greatest advantage of an avatar, or even a spiritual man. They just go into his presence and all their questions get answered. Any number of cases like that in Ramana Maharshi's life also. They used to go and sit in the hall, and Westerners mainly. Many Westerners used to go to Ramana Maharshi, very popular in the West. And they used to get all their answers. How is that? By influence, by the radiation of knowledge, love, power, peace. They get their problems solved. So this is the example and the influence. Okay? In other words, being on the lines of that Christhood, Krishnahood, Buddhahood, transfer themselves into the divine. The law, the dharma, which the avatar establishes, is given for that purpose chiefly. That is the main purpose. To transform humanity. The Christ, Krishna, Buddhahood, Buddha stands in its center as a gate. He makes through himself the way mentioned follow. Now this is very interesting because sometimes the avatar declares his own divinity. And normally people who don't understand these things will say egoism. But I and my Father are one, said Christ. I and my Father are one. And what about Ramakrishna? Of course, some people consider him an avatar, but Sembha has not been very, very specific. But you can say avatar. He says, Jai Ram, Jai Krishna, Shai Ramakrishna. In other words, the one who was Rama, the one who was Krishna, is the same as Ramakrishna. So you declare yourself as the avatar. What about Sri Ramdo? He never declared that openly, but he knew that he is the avatar, and he used to hear Mother and Sri used to give their own pictures, signed pictures to people to concentrate on. So that is some sort of an admission of avatar. And this has also been misinterpreted. Okay? He is like an ordinary person who is giving his photographs and spreading his, because he wants to collect disciples. But that's exactly not the truth at all. Okay? Avatar declares his divinity very often. That is why each incarnation holds before men his own example. Okay? If you remember the Gita, okay, avajananti mam mura manushim tanim ashritam param bhavam ajananto mam bhuta maheshwaram. Then he says, men follow the highest, that's men's who men follow those who set the high standard. Okay? So that is why the avatar is necessary. The whole paragraph is that the necessity of the avatarhood, not only for dharma sansthapanarthaya, but for the raising of man to the higher level of spirituality. Okay. oneness of his humanity with the divine being. Declares that the Son of Man and the Father above, from whom he has descended, are one. He is referring to the Christ. The Christ said that I and my Father are one, from whom he descended. That Krishna in the human body, Manushim Tanum Ashritam, having taken refuge in a human body, was put on a human body, but he is a divine himself. Krishna in the Gita refers that very clearly to himself. Okay? Manushim Tanum Ashritam, Mama Bhuta Maheshwara. That Krishna in the human body, Manushim Tanamashritam, and the Supreme Lord and friend of all creatures are but two revelations of the same divine Purushottama, revealed there in his own being, revealed here in the type of humanity. Revealed there in his own being at the highest level, but here in the type of humanity, the avatar comes down. The avatar can be defined as a divine in a human body. Okay, so that's the avatar. We can go to the next paragraph. That the Gita contains. Okay, so, Archana has read, so now Tarika has joined, and Shilpa also has joined.
Shall I read?
Yeah, you can read. That the Gita contains. Go ahead.
That the Gita contains as its kernel, the second and real object of the avatarhood, is evident even from this passage by itself rightly considered. But it becomes much clearer if we take it not by itself, always the wrong way to deal with the text of the Gita, but in its right close connection with other passages and with the whole teaching. We have to remember and take together its doctrine of the one self in all, of the Godhead seated in the heart of every creature, its teaching about the relations between the Creator and His creation, its strongly emphasized idea of the vibhuti, noting to the language in which the teacher gives his own divine example of selfless works, which applies equally to the human Krishna and the divine Lord of all of the worlds, and giving their due weight to such passages as that in the 9th chapter. Deluded minds despise me lodged in the human body, because they know not my supreme nature of being, Lord of all existences. And we have to read in the light of these ideas this passage we find before us, and its declaration that by the knowledge of his divine birth and divine works, men come to the divine, and by becoming full of him, and even as he, and taking refuge in him, they arrive at his nature and status of being, Madhbhavam. For then we shall understand the divine birth and its object, not as an isolated and miraculous phenomenon, but in its proper place in the whole scheme of the word manifestation. Without that, we cannot arrive at its divine mystery, but shall either scout it altogether or accept it ignorantly and, it may be, superstitiously, or fall to the buddhi and superficial ideas of the modern mind about it, by which it loses all its inner and helpful significance.
Okay, so he is giving further the idea of this paragraph that he has spoken about just now. He is giving more details about it. That the Gita contains as its kernel. Kernel is the seed, the essence of something. Okay? The seed of any plant or tree holds the potentiality of the whole tree and all its qualities. That's a kernel. That's why all these seeds have tremendous potentiality even for nourishment, because it contains the nourishment for the future plant. The whole thing is contained there. That the Gita contains as its kernel the essence of everything. The second and real object of the avatar, which is the second? The first is the dharma samsapanartha. Okay? And the second is the example to the normal man to rise to the divine level. Not the moral level, but the divine level. By the pure sheer example and influence. That's what he's saying. Okay? It is evident even from this passage by itself, right, by itself, rightly considered. There you are. He's saying you have to consider it rightly. Most people don't consider it rightly. They only think of it as dharma, to establish and the destruction of the evil and the protection of the pure and the virtuous. Vinashaya duskritam and dharma samsthapanarthaya vinashaya duskritam bhavan sambhavami yuge yuge. This is what he's saying. It's not only that, but it's the second one that is more important and has to be understood correctly. Then he says, but it becomes much clearer if you take it not by itself. I am reading the sentence without the parenthetical phrase, and then after that we'll read the parenthetical phrase. Okay, so if we take it not by itself, but in its right close connection with other passages and with the whole teaching. Now, this is the thing that everywhere it is the same. Okay, you must not take any one statement as the final. This is the problem with even those texts. Many people don't understand and they take that as the final. This is one of the things also which in the agenda Mother says that the Chinese don't have any psychic being. Now don't jump to conclusions because she may say something else elsewhere. We must not forget that there is a Chinese gentleman here who Mother considered a yogi. So if you take only that statement in the agenda, then you will come to wrong conclusions. Okay, so you must be very careful. Always see the whole and never the shallow. Okay? There is a very interesting 2 lines by Alexander Pope in English poetry. He says, a shallow knowledge is I've forgotten the exact lines. I'll get it next time, I'll tell you. Shallow knowledge is a waste or something like that. Drink deep or taste not the Pyrenean spring. So you must go deep into something and see all its aspects. I've forgotten the exact words. I'll get it and I'll tell you next time. So everywhere, the same thing is being stressed. You must always never go by piecemeal sentences. You must always see it in the right context. Okay? But it's right close connection with other passages and with the whole teaching. We have to remember and take together its doctrine of the one self in all, of the Godhead seated in the heart of every creature. Okay? The divine is there in every creature already. It's teaching about the relations between the Creator and His creation. Okay? It strongly emphasizes the idea of the Vibhuti. Okay, there's a whole chapter on the Vibhuti. What is the Vibhuti? He is a personality, a man who is far superior to the average man and who comes down with divine qualities for a particular purpose. Any work. Okay? He considers even Vivekananda is certainly a Vibhuti because he came down and what did he do? He spread Vedanta into the West. That was a great work that he did. Today you can see the result of that. Okay, Hinduism has spread all over Europe and even all over the world. Okay, you'll be surprised if you see the videos how this Hinduism is spreading. Hinduism is not a religion. Okay, it's a collection of religions, a way of life. So that is spreading. That is one work he did. And he also considers Napoleon as a Vibhuti. What did he do? He, by military conquest, he united Europe, tried to unite Europe. And that has become a standard. And after 150 years or so, Europe has become one. Okay, so that was the work that they did. So a Vibhuti is one who is not an avatar, but who has divine qualities because he has one particular work to do. That's a vibhuti. Okay? I give you two examples of vibhutis. He has not mentioned too many others, but Vivekananda definitely, and also Napoleon. Napoleon normally is interpreted as a very egoistic person and very ambitious and very uh, conquering everybody by military rule. But Sri Aurobindo considers him to be a vibhuti, okay? Because the work he did. And he's saying, strongly emphasize the idea of the vibhuti, noting too the language in which the teacher gives his own divine example of selfless works, which applies equally to the human Krishna and the divine Lord of the world. The divine has no intention of getting or doing anything, and yet he manifests himself in the physical world. And Krishna also, at the human level, is doing the same. That's what Sarvajit mentioned. And giving their due weight to such passages as that in the 9th chapter, deluded minds despise me, lodged in the human body, because they know not my supreme nature of being, Lord of all existences. This is, as I said, chapter 9, verse 11. Avajananti mam mudha manushim tanu mashritam. Param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwara. They do not know that I am the Lord of all creatures, Bhuta Maheshwara. And avajananti, they don't know my param bhavam, my supreme being. So that's what Shantanu is saying. He's translated actually. Then they know not my supreme nature of being. And we have to read in the light of these ideas, this passage we find before us and its declaration that by the knowledge of his divine birth and divine works, men come to the divine, and by becoming full of him, okay? Man mana, okay, bhava, man mana bhava, mad bhavam. So, by becoming full of him, and even as he and taking refuge in him, okay, mam ashritam, okay, so that's what he's saying. They arrive at his nature and status of being mad bhava, my atmosphere or my existence. For then we shall for then we shall understand the divine birth and its object, not as an isolated and miraculous phenomenon, but in its proper place in the whole scheme of the world manifestation. Without that understanding, simply saying, without that, we cannot arrive at its divine mystery. The mystery of the divine coming down to this physical world. Why should we do that? So if we, without that, we cannot arrive at its divine mystery, but shall either scout it altogether. Now the word scout has got many meanings. Here you have to take the word as to sneer at, to reject with disdain. Okay, it's a verb. Okay, it means sneer at. Cock a snook, as they say in English. Okay, to sneer at and reject with disdain. So no, this idea of avatarhood is nonsense. Many people say that. Okay, it's scouted altogether or accepted ignorantly, and it may be superstitiously, or fall into the petty and superficial ideas of the modern mind about it. The ideas about the avatar by the modern mind. So that's what I mean by about it, by which it loses all its inner and helpful significance. This superstitiously and ignorantly is very common in India. In fact, we start considering everybody, many are avatars. Okay. This definitely. And scouting is in the Christian tradition, they don't accept that human beings can be divine. Impossible. How can it be? Okay. That's what he said. Then we have 28. We have got 12 minutes more. We can read one more paragraph. For to the modern mind. Shilpa, you read?
Yes, Dada.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'll read it. Yes, I will read.
Yeah.
For to the modern mind, avatarhood is one of the most difficult to accept
or to understand of all the ideas that are streaming in from the east upon the rationalized human consciousness. It is apt to take it at the best for a mere figure for some high manifestation of human power, character, genius, great work done for the world or in the world, and at the worst to regard it as a superstition. To the heathen, a foolishness, and to the Greeks, a stumbling block. The materialist necessarily cannot even look at it, since he does not believe in God. To the rationalist or the dietist, it is a folly and a thing of derision. To the thoroughgoing dualist who sees an unbridgeable gulf between the human and the divine nature, it sounds like a blasphemy. The rationalists object that if God exists, he is extra cosmic or supracosmic and does not intervene in the affair of the world, but allows them to be governed by a fixed machinery of law. He is, in fact, a sort of far off constitutional monarch or spiritual king log, at the best an indifferent, inactive spirit behind the activity of nature, like some generalized or abstract witness Purusha of the Sankhyas. Is pure spirit and cannot put on a body, infinite and cannot be finite, as the human being is finite, the ever unborn creator, and cannot be the creature born into the world. These things are impossible even to his absolute omnipotence. To these objections, the thoroughgoing dualist would add that God is in his person, his role, and his nature different and separate from the man. The perfect cannot put on human imperfection. The unborn personal God cannot be born as a human personality. The ruler of the worlds cannot be limited in a nature bound human action and in a perishable human body. These objections, so formidable at first sight to the reason, seem to have been present to the mind of the teacher in the Gita when he says that although the divine is unborn, imperishable in his self existence, the Lord of all beings, yet he assumes birth by a supreme resort to the action of his nature and by force of his self Maya, that he whom the deluded despise, because lodged in a human body, is verily in his supreme being, the Lord of all, that he is in the action of the divine consciousness, the creator of the fourfold law, the doer of the works of the world, and at the same time, in the silence of the divine consciousness, the impartial witness of the works of his own nature, for he is always beyond both the silence and the action, the supreme Purushottama. And the Gita is able to meet all this opposition and to reconcile all these contraries because it starts from the Vedantic view of existence of God and the universe.
Yeah. Okay. So big para, and in explaining why the look at the chapter heading on the possibility and purpose of avatarhood. Avatarhood is 90%. There is a big difference between God and man. Okay? So 90% of the people think that it's impossible for man to become God. God is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, and man is exactly the opposite of all that. So how can it be? And Swamdeva is taking a great deal of trouble to explain this. But in the Vedantic philosophy as well as the Gita, very clear, the divine does descend into the physical world. And this is a very clear corollary or a very clear consequence or result of the Advaita philosophy. The Advaita philosophy says that there is only one divine and he is everything. Even matter is the Brahman. So how can it be that the avatar, the divine cannot come down into a human body? It is all there, but he is listing so many. He is talking about the heathen, the Greeks, the materialist, the rationalist, and the deist. We look at all this and he gives the example of King Log. So I'll tell you also what that King Log is. So we have got we have got 6 minutes. I'll go quickly through. The whole paragraph is only explaining that although human beings don't believe that the divine can manifest, yet it is certainly a fact, a spiritual fact. Okay, that's the main thing. For the modern mind, note the word modern mind. He is mainly having the idea of the Western mind because they are very materialistic. I'm not saying that spirituality does not exist in the West. It does, but through religion, not exactly only spirituality. Through religion, it exists. For the modern mind, avatarhood is one of the most difficult to accept or to understand of all the ideas that are streaming in from the East upon the rationalized human consciousness. It is, note the word streaming in. He wrote this 1910-19, but you will remember also that already Vivekananda had gone and even the work of spreading Advaita and Vedanta in the West had started. That's why he's using the word streaming in. It's not yet a river, it's only a stream. Okay. And if it is apt to take it at the best, for a mere figure, it's only an image, it's only a simile. You can't think of it in any other way. For the mere figure of some high manifestation of human power, character, genius, great work done for the world or in the world. Done for the world or in the world. And at the worst, you regard it as a superstition. To the heathen, who is a heathen? A non-Christian is a heathen. Okay? Like the kafir, idea of the kafir in Islam. Okay? And even in our, this idea is there everywhere, all over the world. Okay, those who are not Hindus are blecher. So it's not that it is everywhere. It is there. The human consciousness is the same anywhere, all over the world. Only what varies is the outer habits and outer customs. Man is the same everywhere. So he is objecting one by one to those who take object. He is listing. Certainly is listing all those who don't take the avatarhood as a fact. First of all, the heathen is a foolishness. For the heathen is a foolishness. For the Greeks, a stumbling block. The Greeks had a tremendous amount of 300 BC, a tremendous amount of philosophy. Any number, okay, more than a dozen, and all are great. Okay, so if you read Western philosophy, you will see that Greek philosophy, any number, or just stumbling block, but they could not think of the avatar. Then there is a materialist. First the heathen, then the Greeks, then the materialist. And materialist necessarily cannot even look at it because there is no question of the divine. Even the divine doesn't exist, let alone he is coming down into a human body. Since he does not even believe in God. Next, he is a rationalist or the deist. Now, who is a deist? Dei. Dei is the Roman word, I think, in Latin, means God. Okay, Dei. So, deist is one who believes in God. Okay? Even to the one who believes in God, it's a folly and a thing of derision, of irony. Derision, irony. To the thoroughgoing dualist, the one who says, like we have dualists in our Indian philosophy, Madhvacharya, okay, and it's partial dualist is also Ramanuja, okay, who says that you cannot be the divine, you can have a relation with the divine. Who sees an unbridgeable gulf between human and divine nature. It sounds like a blasphemy. In fact, the blasphemy is, there are blasphemy laws in Islam. Okay. The rationalist, now he is considering the rationalist, objects that if God exists, he is extra cosmic or supra cosmic. So he is using two words, extra cosmic and supra cosmic. Extra cosmic means outside the cosmos, and supra cosmic means in the cosmos but at the height of at the highest level. Okay, very clearly, extra cosmic, you have, for instance, the word extracurricular activities. When you are in your school, you can take up any extracurricular activities. That is, you can take up photography, you can take up other things, you can take up social work. These are extra, or anything that you're doing more than what is to be taught in the school. So extra cosmic, outside the universe. Supracosmic in the cosmos, but at the height of the cosmos, not in the lower regions. Okay? But does not intervene in the affairs of the world. Now, this is an interesting phrase because when you go to the Nirvana consciousness, the Brahman consciousness, you do get the feeling that the physical world is mechanical energy, unconscious. That the divine is not interfering here at all. Okay? So that's why the rationalists may believe in that. Okay? But allows them to be governed by a fixed machinery of law, that is Prakriti. Okay? Then he goes on to King Law. Okay? He's saying, you know what a constitutional monarch is, huh? A constitutional monarch is a king who has no power, like the English monarch. Okay? He is only a titular head. His only title, he is a titular head. We have the same idea we have brought about in other countries also. You have a president. In our India, we have a president who is powerless, almost powerless. Sometimes there is a little bit of power, but that is almost, it's the parliament that has the power and the prime minister, but not the constitution. The president has no power. He is only a titular head, title. Okay. So now he is talking of spiritual king law. Now, Srinath's knowledge is so much, even of Aesop's fables. He knows what king log is. So we have to just, I'll finish with the description of king log. Okay. So, a king who has no power and no consciousness, that is one. Now the story of King Log is like this. Story of a frog who wanted to be a king, a frog. So Zeus, he wanted to be a king. So Zeus is the supreme divine, threw down a log because they wanted a king. So the frogs wanted a king, so Zeus threw down a log. And the frogs climbed up and saw it to be dead and ineffective. They asked another, don't give us something which is useless. We want a king who has got power. So then they asked again, and Zeus gave them a snake that ate all of them up. So this is Aesop's fable having political implications. It means either rulers are despotic and useless, people who are all the time terrorizing the normal public and making them suffer. Like there are so many dictators, or there is no power at all. So the divine is not like that. He is there, he is everywhere. He is not a useless titular monarch. But I will stop here today because it's already time. Okay, so we'll take up this next time with King Law. We'll continue from there. Okay, because there's another 10-15 lines, so we'll go through that. Okay.
Yes, I'll make a note.
Okay. Au revoir, everybody. Have a nice
Thank you, Ranganath.
Thank you.